Hey guys, my name is Leonardo Madrigal from Left Handed Matters, and today we're going to be discussing the sloppy wet kiss debate. If you know the song How He Loves Us, made popular by David Crowder Band, then you probably know that in one of the lyrics there is a stanza that says, like earth meets heaven, like a sloppy wet kiss, but a lot of churches, including David Crowder Band, sing it now as earth meets heaven like an unforeseen kiss, and that's the big debate. So we're going to be talking about why it was changed in the first place. Did it even need to? And what's the bigger picture in all this? Because there is a lot of really interesting things that I want to get into the larger picture in the Christian music scene and ask some deeper questions other than the really silly eye rolling debate of Sloppy Wet Kiss. So, is this a controversial song or are we just controversial people?
And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest.
But let's go ahead and start by reading the lyrics because this is going to bring some good context of how beautiful and poetic the song is. Again, this is How He Loves Us. It's like a classic early 2000s worship song. It's pretty much on everyone's playlist. So let's get into these lyrics. And heaven meets earth like an unforeseen kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. I don't have to maintain these regrets when I think about the way that he loves us. Wow, that's so good. Even the line before that is so good. And we are his portion, and he is our prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. If his grace is an ocean, then we're all sinking. Ooh, that's really good. That's awesome imagery. But yeah, the imagery is what started this whole debacle in the first place, and it really stems from the sloppy wet kiss part. Oddly enough, it's not the word kiss that made a lot of people feel uncomfortable because they obviously kept it in the second version, but it's the sloppy wet part that made people feel uncomfortable. Now, the word moist, yeah, I can see, but sloppy wet kiss, I don't know what kind of imagery you get with that, but for me, I kind of picture like a baby kissing you on the cheek, just full of saliva everywhere, or like a dog running up to you and kissing you a bunch of times after like drinking a bowl of water or something. Either way, in both instances, I think it's like this pure, innocent love, like this, this act of pure kindness and joy, something that you don't really think about. It's kind of like in the Bible too, Jesus says to come to me like children because of how innocent and pure they are. So that's what I kind of get from the sloppy wet kiss line. It's like when heaven meets earth, or when earth meets heaven like a sloppy wet kiss. It's almost like when our imperfection and our sloppy and nastiness meets God's perfection. David Crowder Band actually David Crowder Band David Crowder himself actually said in an interview, he was asked why the lyrics were changed, and he said, just to sum up, I think that a lot of people came up to him after services that he would play the song and say that they felt uncomfortable, that they felt like those lyrics were inappropriate for a worship setting, that it was distracting for a worship environment. And when they think about sloppy wet kiss, they think of people kissing, something sexual. There's a lot of people in other comment sections and stuff that said that when they heard the song on the radio, they wanted to call it in so they can have it removed from the playlist because they thought it wasn't appropriate for the kids to listen to that. Just a lot of drama like that, and I think that's just so stupid. I mean, I don't, do you know how to kiss? Every time you kiss, is there like fountain of saliva? Is a fountain of saliva coming out of you when you kiss? One interpretation that I like was this guy, he thought about like his first kiss when he was a teenager or whatever, like the butterfly feeling in your stomach, the heart beating really fast. It's like this very innocent, but yet very kind of almost intimidating and nerve-wracking experience. And it's almost true to us. When we convert to Christianity, when we accept who God is, it can be nerve-wracking, but also very thrilling at the same time. Yeah, I just think about a baby or a dog. I've never had a sloppy wet kiss. I mean, the sloppy wet kiss just sounds like, to me, it sounds like a sloppy Joe. It's almost like ugh, like, yeah, I understand people kiss passionately, and there's a lot of things going on inside their mouths when they're kissing, but I don't think anyone ever describes it as a sloppy wet kiss without it being negative. Like, wow, that guy kisses so sloppy. Yeah, that was that would not be a good thing. But the thing I want to get into a lot more that I think is a little bit more interesting and that holds a little bit more of a bigger debate than just changing some lyrics is why it needed to be changed in the first place. Yeah, I understand some people were uncomfortable, but I think context makes a lot of difference in this scenario. Kind of the big shocker in all this is that David Crowder Band didn't even write the song. It's a cover. And the part where I had to facepalm myself a million times was that amazing songwriter named John Mark McMillan wrote the song How He Loves Us. And I kick myself in the butt all the time because I knew of John Mark McMillan. I'm a big fan of all his work and his wife's work. Yeah, they're also responsible for writing like The King of My Heart, which is another awesome worship song that I love. John wrote this one, and it was David Crowder who had to ask permission from him to cover the song. And after he was getting a little bit of a pushback from his church, he had to ask permission to change the lyrics, which John Mark McMillan was kind of reluctant on for a little bit, which I kind of understand. I'll get into that in a little bit. But David Crowder's argument to that was that, hey, you know what? This song's been out for about 3 years. People who love the song and know the song, who enjoy the song, they know that the lyrics is sloppy wet kiss. But now let's give the other side an opportunity to enjoy it. So let's give the people who are uncomfortable, let's make them feel comfortable when the song plays now. Like, let's give them a chance. And I guess he said yes. And then there's also, I think Passion Music also does Unforeseen Kiss. But then you have people like Kim Walker Smith, who also wanted to cover the song for one of her albums, I believe, and she does Sloppy Wet Kiss.
So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss.
And even Bethel, their most recent rendition of the song, they do Sloppy Wet Kiss. I guess it just depends on the church and their environment and what makes them feel comfortable and not. But my big issue now is no longer is this a controversial song or are we just controversial people? But it now goes into this idea of, is it okay to take a personal worship song to make it a corporate worship song? And should we allow changes in that song just to appeal to more people? So for those of you, again, who didn't know, he actually wrote this for a friend of his named Steven. I believe he was a youth pastor. I could be wrong about that. But he ended up dying in a car crash. So John Mark McMillan needed to vent. It really hurt him and it really made him distraught. He was angry and he needed to vent to God. And he knew that by writing this worship song, that would be the way that he would be able to release this feeling and to kind of get it out of his system. And I really kind of feel for that because I've had people in my life who have passed away, and I've used music as an escape, as an outlet for me to not only get myself back in tune with my life, but almost as like this conversation with God, like me catching up with my feelings and venting to God about them. And usually something beautiful happens when you give up those emotions to God. Not give up being emotional, but when you give God your emotions, when you give God your anger. And so that's exactly what happened to John Mark McMillan. This beautiful song about how he loves came out of this very dark and troublesome time for him. You guys need to check it out, his original version, and it's almost like night and day to all the other ones that have come out. It's so much more personal, so much more raw, so much more intimate, and dare I say a little bit more beautiful than I thought it could ever be. For some reason, How He Loves Us is kind of forgotten a little bit because it falls in line with the repetitive side of things, of definitely with the chorus. But everyone who plays the song knows that it's so powerful and that it holds so much weight and it moves a lot of people. And that's because I think it's written not only beautifully, but it comes from an actual real place. So if we go back to the sloppy wet kiss debates, I think the big question now is, do we compromise those feelings? Do we compromise what John McMillan wrote and what he meant? Do we compromise all that just to appeal to more people in a corporate level? That's a tough question. I try to put myself in those shoes as well. And I want to say, yeah, I would compromise because I want people to have that opportunity to worship God through my songs. Having people worship God with my music, it just glorifies God more, and I would love that opportunity, not because it'll make me feel good and because I did all the work, because it glorifies God in the end. All that being said, I honestly think I would say no. I wouldn't want to compromise my feelings. Well, that's a bad sentence. And maybe it is a little bit selfish and maybe it is a little bit prideful, but I wouldn't want to compromise a real place and a real moment of vulnerability and emotions towards God written in the form of a song into this mass appealed corporate worship song. And that does sound really selfish, but when does the artist stop and when does the corporate begin?
So heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns
Because if I'm writing a song, a worship song for God, and I try to make it as family friendly as possible and try to use words and imagery that I know other people would like, I feel like I'm not coming from a real place and I feel like I'm just phoning it in. I'm trying to do something for someone else to like. When I think of worship, I think of intimacy. I think of a personal relationship with God. I think of the passion and the raw emotions behind that. And then it would be totally awesome if people can be like-minded and understand and come from a real place. I'm not just writing just to make people happy. I don't know. I think I'm saying it wrong, but I'm hoping and I'm trusting that you guys kind of get what I'm saying. I just don't want to ever do anything with my talent that is not directly towards God. And the moment I start writing songs for the money or for the fame or just because I know people will like it and it'll get more hits or more views, then I think I'm doing it for the wrong reason. Can't really speak for John Mark McMillan and David Crowder. I don't know the entire conversations that they've had, and obviously he got the okay to change the lyric. But yeah, from an outside perspective, I would be pretty upset because here's John McMillan wrote this very passionate song and now it's blown up, yet no one knows he even wrote the song. And I guess you can argue, is that the point? Does he need to be popular to write the song? It's just more questions and we can go down the rabbit hole. If it was me personally and people were saying, hey, I love your worship song, but there's a line in there that doesn't quite fit, that makes people feel uncomfortable, can you take it out? I think I'd just say, well, I can just not play the song. But if you want a generic worship song, then I can write you a generic worship song. Until then, I'm going to be honest with myself and honest with my relationship with God. Drive home the point a little bit further about this whole independent versus corporate thing and the whole sloppy wet kiss versus unforeseen kiss thing. If you don't know the original version of the song, then you wouldn't know that there's actually an added stanza to the song. There's actually another verse in the song. Every single version, at least the lot of them that I watched, take it out completely. And the reason why they take it out completely is because it talks about Stephen, the guy who died. So in the recorded and fully published song where it's John Mark McMillan mentioning his friend.
Oh, I thought about you the day Stephen died, and you met me between my breaking. I know that I still love you, God, despite the agony. There's people they want to tell me you're cruel, but if Stephen could sing, he'd say it's not true, 'cause you...
Oh, that's so good. But do you understand how this is no longer this corporate worship song that everyone can sing? Because then everyone would be talking about Stephen. No one knows who Stephen is. Not everybody knows who Stephen is. I don't know who he is. But now we're going to this verse that goes, "Oh, the thought about you, God, that the day Stephen died, and you met me between my breaking. And I know that I still love you, but God, despite all the agony, listen, people, they want to tell me that you're cruel." In the verse, How He Loves Us, he's saying that people are telling me that God is cruel. But if Stephen could sing right now, he would say it's not true because of the way that God loves us. Oh, come on. Just let me remind you, that version is in no other version of the song. Why? Of course it's not going to be. No one's going to sing about Stephen because no one has that personal relationship about Stephen. But that's the whole point of the song. It's created by this guy coming from a real place with real experiences, worshiping God in a real way. Not to point any fingers, but if it's going to be turned into this corporate song for everyone to sing, you now have to get rid of a lot of things about the song. So not only are they changing Wet Sloppy Kiss to Unforeseen Kiss, I mean, that's a minor thing now compared to that everyone's been completely eliminating the last verse of the song. I don't know. I'm very passionate when it comes to music, and I definitely love a good story behind the music, and I'm always going to defend the underdog. The big question now is, where do we draw the line? Because that's part of the original song, and as soon as you start making changes to a piece of art, it starts to slowly lose its meaning and lose its impact that it was originally intended for. I just strongly encourage you guys to go ahead and listen to the original song because it's going to kind of change your perception of the song from here on out. And for me personally, I definitely can't listen to any other version now. So that's just my 2 cents. Everyone else who's upset about it, I'd say get over it. If you are currently typing away right now and trying to convince me of your argument and why I'm wrong, just don't. You probably don't know that YouTube is not the place to change people's minds. And this video is definitely not to change people's minds. It's just to let people know that if you agree with me, you're not alone. You know, you definitely aren't the underdog in this situation. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm trying to hit 50 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you can send this around to maybe people who kind of like this sort of discussion, that would really mean a lot to me. Other than that, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks a lot. Bye.